Welcome back to the channel. A little different video today. It's springtime and that means it's show time. So getting ready for a show coming up in about a month, and I stumbled across an engine that I got almost 15 years ago, and I decided to drag it out and see if I could get it running and take it to the show along with a couple other engines. But this engine right here I picked up about 15 years ago, like I said. It's a Sandow lines engine. Can't really find too much information on Sandow. I do know that it should be a blue color, kind of a medium blue with white pinstriping. Somebody had repainted this one. This one was sold through Interstate, which was a distributor for implements, farm implements, manure spreaders, stuff like that. And that's how you got a Sandow engine, was you bought them through distributors. There were several of them. This one was sold by Interstate out of Waterloo, Iowa. And it's a neat little engine. I'm guessing it's a 1 horse or maybe a horse and a half. The tag looks original, but it's not stamped with a horsepower. It's a 4-inch piston, diameter piston, and it takes about a 5-inch stroke. And the card is not original. I'm not sure what it is, but it seems period correct, so I'll leave it alone for now. I'm guessing this engine is probably around 1915, maybe a little bit earlier than that. It's just an odd little engine. It's got a water hopper that is like an associated with the roll top water hopper. It's got a Galloway style igniter, Galloway style muffler, a United type cylinder head, and it's just odd. It's got like an associated style governor linkage. And I don't know that the fuel tank's original, but it does look period correct. So I'm going to get it cleaned up here. I got it soaking in some engine degreaser. I'm really not too concerned about the paint because it's not correct. But let's see, what else can I tell you about it? The gas tank's going to need some work. Just going to have to go through and check the whole thing. It is battery and coil ignited, so no magneto for ignition. It's just going to be a battery and coil, and I believe that would be mounted back here on these little slats that are sitting here, because there is some wiring back to it. So it has a lot of compression, which is good, which means that the valves are in good shape, rings aren't stuck, cylinders in good shape. I probably won't take any of that apart, but there is some other things that I'm going to have to do and clean up and check out before I run it. It's got a Lunkenheimer small carburetor mixer on it, and I believe that is correct. But anyway, I'll bring you in a little closer and we'll look at a few things just a little closer. Here's a close-up of that igniter, and I say it's a Galloway type igniter because it's got this little hand trip here. You can actually trip that igniter if the crank is in the right position, and it'll start from a dead stop. So got a little bit of work to do out here. This isn't right. I don't know what they were trying to do there, but that shouldn't be that way for the push rod. We'll have to take a look at that. And then here's back in the governor section. It's just pretty dirty, but it looks complete and it's all free and moves around really good. And then there's a little bit of play in the crank here, in the wrist, the rod end of the rod bearing here. I'm going to have to do some work on that. Probably just take a shim out, but I'll take the bearing caps off and look them over really good. And then the gas tank, It's going to need some repair. This inlet spout is broken off. I'm going to have to resolder that and then clean it up and throw a battery in it and see what it does. Going to get started here, just a basic cleanup on the engine. I've been soaking it in some degreaser. Just going to give it a good wipe down here. Looking for breaks and anything that looks out of the ordinary. This engine, I learned a little bit more about Sandow. They didn't actually make engines. They resold them, so they would buy a lot of engines from a manufacturer for a discount, and then they would resell them through distributors. So this is actually a Galloway, and I think it's a 2 1/4. I'm going to have to check into that, but it is a Galloway, and that cart is a Galloway cart, so that is correct for this engine. And I'm going to have to do a little bit more research on it, but I think it is probably in the 1915 to 1918 range. So I'm just giving it a good wipe down here, and then we'll get to tearing it apart. I'm going to have to take the gas tank off, like I said, and do some repair there, and then the igniter needs to be checked. All those igniters, you just have to check them when you're running them, before you run them, so that you can make sure they're clean and clean the contacts. And then I take a penny and run through the contacts, and that cleans it up. So we'll just get it cleaned up here a little bit and then get to work. A couple other points on this engine. I think it weighs probably about 300 pounds, and it is a hit and miss engine, so regulates its speed by shutting the ignition off, so it coasts back down to below the governor speed, and then it'll fire again when there is no load on the engine. It's the only way it has to regulate its speed. So we'll start out by looking at the fuel system on this engine. It's pretty standard gravity fed type fuel system that's found on a lot of these smaller gas engines. There's a Lunkenheimer mixer up front, and then there's a union there for separating the line from the mixer, and then there's a quarter turn shut-off valve. It's in the off position. Then there's a quarter-inch water line, goes back to an elbow fitting to the tank, and then it's all just gravity fed down that line to the mixer. Well, we'll start by getting the mixer off of this engine. I'm going to loosen this pipe fitting here. That'll separate the mixer from the main fuel line. You really got to plan out these fuel systems when you're using this threaded pipe, so that you can have unions where you need them for separation, and just getting all the fittings to mate up to each other and have the take up right for threading. Well, that's getting tight, and that's because I'm turning it the wrong way. I'm backwards on which way it loosened up. It's a right-hand thread, and I'm looking at it from the back side. So turning that the wrong way. That top elbow is loose too. It's probably some rust erosion up there has made that loose, so I'm going to have to tighten that up as well. So we'll just keep loosening that up and get it off of there, and then be on to the next part. I don't think there's much wrong with this mixer, so we'll just have to look it over and see how it goes. We'll work on getting this tank out. These tie-down straps were kind of a booger. I spent a lot of time working on that. I'm just loosening this up a little bit more. That nut under there's pretty tight. I just got to pull it up a little bit, and then it's got to spring out of its mounting holes to get it out of there. So got that out. So maybe the tank assembly will come out. No, it won't come out yet. There's a union back in behind that flywheel, and it's just enough that it can't pass the flywheel. That fuel line is extremely close to the flywheel, and I'm looking here to see if there's a way to get it out of there with the flywheel profile in there, and there's not. So I'm going to have to unscrew that union. Well, that didn't work very good. Got to hold on to the tank when I turn that union off. So I'm going to try to hold that and spin that union out of there, then get that front valve, shut-off valve and union out, and then the tank should slide out. So you can see when I lay it on the floor that there's just a little union there on that line. You can see that maybe there, and that was just enough that it wouldn't pass through there. So now the tank will slide out, and I'll bring the tank up to the camera here, show you a repair that was done. At some point the bottom of the tank got broke out by the fitting there, probably getting torqued or something. So I've been a lot of solder on there, so we're going to have to put some sealer in that tank and make sure that it's sealed up. Need to clean the inside of the tank out. I'm going to use these 5/8 nuts. I think there's 10 of them. I'm going to drop them in the tank and put some water in there with some Dawn dish soap, and then rattle them around, shake them around real good. That'll knock the rust and any caked up fuel or anything in there, get that cleaned out. Then I'll let it dry out, and then I'll be ready to coat the inside of the tank. So it's a pretty simple procedure. Getting ready to coat the inside of the tank. Put that sealer in there. You can see it in that can. It's really weird stuff. It's about like really runny aluminum paint. It's not the typical red coat brand that I usually use, but you can't get that anymore. It seems like they're out of business or something, so you get this stuff instead. I'm running some painter's tape around this bottom drain that the fuel line goes in, so I can seal that off, because the way this works is I'll pour the sealer in the tank, and then I'll roll it around really slow, and that'll coat the inside of the tank, and then we'll dump the excess out. So get that bottom sealed, and then well, I just made a mess here. I got that stuff everywhere. You can see when I was mixing it, the can was extremely full. It was just hard to manually mix it, so it's got a mess there. But anyway, I'll pour it in the tank here. This is 1 pint. It should be plenty to do this tank. End up pouring out the excess, and they say not to reuse it, but I don't know why. It's just the manufacturer says not to reuse it. So anyway, I'll probably save it and see what it does. But now you just take and roll it around real slow. Try to get that sealer everywhere in the tank and on the ends there real good, and just roll it around and keep coating that inside of that tank, and then we'll pour the excess out and let it dry for up to 96 hours, they said, to cure out. So I'll have to take a few days off and work on something else here. But we'll pour it back out. There's not a lot left. It does really stick to the inside of the tank, and there I am just rolling it around, coating the top of the tank as I'm pouring it out. I'll do that from both sides. Let that run that back in there. It ran about 1/3 of the pint back in, so I'm just going to keep it, see what it does. I don't know if I can reuse it or not. I don't know why it would go bad, but they say not to reuse it, so I just let that dry after we get done here, and then we'll have a nice sealed up tank that won't have any fuel problems then. On to removing the igniter now. I'm going to let that tank set for a few days to cure out that sealer. These Galloway igniters, you have to pull the trip lever off of the push rod to give enough clearance to get the igniter out. It's pretty tight fit there, so you got to take that out. It's not a big deal. It's a pin that's through the push rod, and then you get that out, and then that lever comes out. It's pretty easy. I lost some footage here on actually working on the igniter, but I'll have to do a video later anyway on the 8-horse mogul igniter. So that'll be the igniter video explaining it a little bit more. It's a pretty simple device. So I don't know what the deal was, but these bolts were, these nuts were just almost finger tight. So I don't know why that was, but maybe somebody had that igniter out at some point. It sure wasn't me. I don't remember doing it in the last 15 years. So we'll get those 2 bolts out, and then I'll pull the wire off, the hot wire from the coil off the igniter here, and then it'll be free to come out. So it pulls right out there, and I'll show you those points. There's points that are inside the combustion chamber. That's what makes the spark.
So you can see kind of how those work. They go together, and when they snap apart, that's when there's an arc in the ignition. There's that goofy spring that's on there. I got a new spring to put on, and then here's that trip where you can manually start it with that finger trip. So we'll get to going here, get everything back together, and see if this thing will run. Here's a very simple view of how an igniter works. So we have a battery source, in this case a 12-volt battery, and then we have a coil, and then we have the igniter contacts that are inside the combustion chamber. One is isolated and charged to the 12 volts or the voltage of the battery. The other one is tied to the ground. And when they touch, current starts flowing, flows through the coil of wire that's in the coil. And then when the points open, when those contacts open, the inductance that's in that coil causes that voltage to break down differently than it would if you just had the wire hooked to it with no coil. Causes a higher voltage spike, and then that causes a better sparking effect between those two igniter contacts, and that's what ignites the fuel. So without the coil, it really wouldn't work because there wouldn't be enough spark there. That coil actually amplifies the spark because it increases the voltage when that field is collapsing of the points trying to come apart. So that's basically how an igniter works. It's pretty simple. It's what they did before spark plugs and high voltage magnetos. So this is typically lower voltage, and a spark plug is actually quite a bit higher voltage required. So anyway, that's how an igniter works.
Well, I got the Sandow engine back together. I went through the igniter, cleaned it, put the correct spring on it, cleaned the fuel system, just kind of washed it out with some rust and stuff in there. Cleaned the fuel tank out, coated that with a liner resin for sealing it off and making sure there's no leaks in it. Checked the engine over, lubricated it real well, and I'm ready to start it. So I'm going to try starting it, and we'll see how it goes. I'll bring you in closer so you can watch the whole process. So I've got my battery and coil hooked up to the igniter. This is a huge battery. It's the only 12-volt battery I have right now. Usually I would run an engine like this off of a motorcycle battery or a lawnmower battery. But this is the battery for my trailer winch. It's a deep cycle 12-volt battery. Any battery like that would do. This is just really huge. It doesn't require this much power at all. It's just what I have to run it here just as a test run. So first thing I'm going to do is turn the fuel on. And there's a quarter turn valve on this side of the engine. I'm going to turn that on, and I'm going to open the needle valve on the mixer about a quarter of a turn. Really not sure what it wants, but that'll be enough that it'll run and at least tell me what it wants, if it wants more fuel or not. And then when it starts, it's going to fire, and then it's going to coast, and then it's going to fire again. And what that is that's the hit and miss governor. So anyway, then the igniter will trip, and it'll fire, and then it'll coast. So I'm going to roll it over and see if I can get it to start. It's got a lot of compression, which is good, but it makes it kind of hard to start. So we'll see what it wants to do here. Looks like it wants to run. So I'll turn the oiler on, and then I'll move the camera around. You can see some of these linkages run. Notice how it fires and then turns the ignition off by holding the exhaust valve open and coast. And you can see how it bounces the cart because it's got so much compression. So now I'll shut the engine off by turning the needle valve to the off position, shutting the fuel off. So we'll see how that works. And there it finally ran out of fuel. So I'd say it's a runner. I'm going to shut the oiler off now. That's the only way that piston gets oil is through that oiler. So I'll shut that off. I'm going to have it at the show, hopefully belt it up to a small forge blower. And so stay tuned for that video later on. See if we can get this engine to do a little work. And I'm really glad that it ran. It's kind of neat that I got this engine 15 years ago, and with just a little bit of work, it was a runner. Usually the ones I buy are not that way. They take a lot of work. So thanks for watching the video, and see you in the next video. Like and subscribe if you like what we're doing on the channel. And thanks again for watching.